Hello everyone. Today I'm here with another text from your supplementary reader, which is The Making of a Scientist. Remember, children, this is the last text from your supplementary reader, and this is written by Robert W. Peterson. So, my dear students, what is the chapter The Making of a Scientist all about? Well, let me tell you that the making of a scientist revolves around the leading scientist Richard H. E. Bright, who had the habit of collecting things like butterflies, rocks, fossils, and coins ever since he was a kid. The lesson highlights how E. Bright became a scientist. Now, let us read some information regarding Richard H. E. Bright and his present occupation. Richard H. E. Bright is an American molecular biologist. He is the Board of Governors, Professor of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Rutgers University and Laboratory Director at the Waxman Institute of Microbiology. So, dear students, with this brief introduction about the scientist Richard H. E. Bright, let us now move on to the chapter The Making of a Scientist. Alright? Now let us come to the text of the lesson. Here I'm going to divide the chapter into different bits, and I request you all to have a thorough reading of the lesson. Alright? Now, the very first part of the lesson is all about Richard's success at a young age. So, Richard E. Bright is the name of the scientist about whom we are taking up a lesson today, and the chapter begins with the revelation that Richard came up with a new theory on how cells work at the age of 22. This theory was explained by Richard and his friend through an article published in the scientific journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. It was a rare achievement of its own kind. This is because it was the first time that the research work of college students was published in that important journal. So it is a very important kind of achievement, very rare achievement of its own kind, and that was because for the first time the research work of college students was published in that journal. So you all have to remember about this remarkable achievement made by Richard when he was hardly 22. Alright? Next, Richard, a collector since childhood. So here we got to know about Richard's childhood. What were the different kinds of things, alright, that Richard used to do when he was a child? Alright, what were his preoccupations? First of all, let us understand that Richard was the only child of his parents. He grew up at Reading in Pennsylvania, the USA, where there wasn't much that he could do. Richard, in fact, had no companions to play with, so collecting butterflies became his passion. Besides that, he also started collecting things like rocks, fossils, and coins. Stargazing all night was another favorite pastime of Richard. So here, from this particular part of the text, you all have got to know about the different kinds of preoccupations or different kinds of interests that Richard had ever since his childhood. Most significantly, you all need to remember that in the absence of any companions to play with, Richard had started collecting butterflies as a hobby. Not only butterflies, he in fact had also started collecting some other things like rocks, fossils, and coins. Over and above all this, another favorite pastime or hobby of Richard was stargazing all night. So, by means of doing all these things, Richard was simply preoccupied and he just got himself busy with all these favorite pastime of him, right? So let's see what happens next. Richard's mother, his companion. Richard's mother was constantly with him. She was very supportive and understanding in nature. So Richard's mother played a pivotal, a very significant role in the making of the scientist in Richard. She was very encouraging, supportive, and she really understood the needs of her child. So accordingly, she did everything possible to guide the inquisitive child in the right direction. She encouraged Richard by taking him on trips and bought him telescopes and other equipments. She found work to challenge Richard's curious mind and helped him to learn a lot. So here was Richard's beloved mother who played a very important role, alright, because she was there by his side all the time. She used to take Richard on some trips and then bought him telescopes and other equipments. In fact, she found certain work to challenge Richard's inquisitive mind, and thereby she helped him to learn a lot. So by doing all these things, Richard's mother constantly egged on or supported Richard in his learning stage of life. Alright. So Richard, as you have seen, was passionate about collecting butterflies, and by the time he was in second grade, he had collected all 25 species of butterflies found around his hometown. Now, that possibly could have been the end of his collection of butterflies. However, there was a defining moment in his life when Richard's mother had given the child a book to read. So, the reading of a children's book titled The Travels of Monarch X inspired Richard immensely. It opened the world of science to his eager mind, and he became more and more interested in learning about it. So, this was a turning point, to be precise, because after having read the children's book, The Travels of Monarch X, Richard grew more and more curiosity and interest towards the world of science. The book asks the readers to study butterfly migrations. They were asked to tag butterflies for research by Dr. Ecohart of the University of Toronto. Richard came in contact with the scientist, Dr. Ecohart, through this book, who influenced him greatly later on. Alright, so in this part of the text, basically, you all have got to know about Richard's favorite pastime of collecting butterflies, and then his sudden but significant turning point, alright, when he got to read the book The Travels of Monarch X, which had really inspired Richard a lot, as it had opened the world of science to his ever inquisitive mind. And after having gone through this book, he became more and more interested in learning about this. At the same time, he have got to know about Dr. Ecohart and how Richard had come in contact with the scientist Dr. Ecohart to this particular book. Alright. Dear students, let us now learn something about the monarch butterfly. Just now, you have got to know that Richard was greatly inspired from reading the book Travels of Monarch X, right? So this book was gifted to the child by his beloved mother, and after having gone through this book, Richard developed a great interest in the world of science. So it had opened up another world of science to the young child's inquisitive mind. And from then on, he had developed a sort of passion and real interest in science. So what exactly are the monarch butterflies? Let us know a little bit of information about it. Alright, so the monarch butterfly is one of the most recognizable and well-studied butterflies on the planet. Its orange wings are laced with black lines and bordered with white dots. Famous for this seasonal migration, millions of monarchs migrate from the United States and Canada south to California and Mexico for the winter. Monarch's colorful pattern makes them easy to identify, and that's the idea. The distinctive colors warn predators that they are foul-tasting and poisonous. The poison comes from their diet. Milkweed itself is toxic, but monarchs have evolved not only to tolerate it, but to use it to their advantage by storing the toxins in their bodies and making themselves poisonous to predators such as birds. Moving on with the text, Richard raises monarch butterflies. So, Richard decided to raise a flock of butterflies at home to study their migration pattern. He would catch a female monarch, take her eggs, and raise them in his basement. He would watch all the stages of development of the butterfly. Then he would tag their wings and set them free. He did it for many years and raised thousands of butterflies in the basement of his home. Eventually, Richard began to lose his interest in tagging butterflies because the entire process was quite tedious and there was no feedback of any sort. So, because of these two reasons, he had slowly developed a lack of interest in the process of tagging butterflies. Alright? Richard then enters County Science Fair, which is another significant development in his life story. Alright, so Richard got a hint of what real science is when he was in the 7th grade. Richard entered a county science fair, although he did not win any award in that particular county science fair. In his entry for the science fair, Richard displayed slides of frogs under a microscope. Alright? Now, having lost at that particular science fair, Richard realized that he needed to carry out real experiments in order to be able to win an award. So, from this experience of having lost at the science fair, Richard got to understand and realize a very important lesson that science is not just about mere display. Rather, it was all about real experiments and projects. So, Richard wrote to Dr. Ecohart for ideas, who provided him with many suggestions for experiments. These experiments kept Richard preoccupied and engaged all through his high school. Not only that, it also made him win many prizes at the county and international science fairs in the following years. Alright? So, what happens next of all is Richard's 8th grade project. So, this part of the story is all about Richard's project when he was in the 8th grade. Another significant moment in his life. Richard tried to find the cause of a viral fever that kills thousands of monarch butterflies. He thought that a beetle may carry the virus that causes viral fever. So, accordingly, he tried raising caterpillars in the presence of beetles. Although Richard didn't get any real results from this experiment, he still won a prize for this experimental project of his. Alright. Richard's win at County Science Fair. Richard experimented on viceroy butterflies. He tried to prove that viceroys copy monarchs. Viceroys do it to protect themselves from birds, as birds don't eat monarchs. This project won the first prize in the zoology division and overall third prize in the county science fair. So, dear students, this part of the text is all about Richard's win at county science fair. Now, what was Richard's experiment all about? Richard's experiment was concerning viceroy butterflies, and from this experiment he tried to prove that the viceroy butterflies copy the monarch butterflies. Alright, and the purpose behind the viceroys doing so is that they try to protect themselves from birds because birds do not eat monarchs. So this particular project of Richard won him prize in the zoology division, and besides that he also won third prize in the country science fair. So this was a kind of remarkable achievement made by Richard. Alright, now you can see on the screen a picture of a viceroy butterfly, and given on the right hand side is a little bit of information, or you can say facts on viceroy butterflies, which are: number one, viceroys are mimics, they copy the monarchs. Second point, viceroys love wet areas. Third point, they don't migrate. Fourth point, multiple generations live in one season. Alright. Richard's discovery of a hormone. Richard was curious to know the reason behind 12 gold spots on a monarch pupa. He, along with another friend of him, who was an excellent science student, built a device to prove that the spots were producing a hormone necessary for its full development, thus disproving that the spots were not just ornamental as assumed by everyone. This project got Richard first prize in the county fair and also entry into the International Science and Engineering Fair. He got third prize for zoology in this fair. So this is all about Richard's discovery of a hormone, and this project got him many prizes. Alright. Now, moving on with the text further, Richard continues his research on monarch pupa. Richard grew cells from the wings of a monarch butterfly. He further proved that cells grow into scales of wings only when they were injected with the hormone from the gold spots. He carried on his work at the Army Laboratory and at the laboratory of the US Department of Agriculture. After his freshman year at Harvard, Richard returned to the laboratory of the Department of Agriculture and did more work on the hormone from the gold spots. He was able to identify the chemical structure of the hormone, which eventually gave him a new idea about cell life. Richard's study of cell and DNA. So, Richard's research on the hormone gave him an idea. He believed that his study could tell how cells read their DNA. He, along with his college roommate James R. Wong, worked on the idea. Then they wrote a paper explaining their theory. Richard's glory at Harvard. Richard graduated with second position in a class of 1,510 students. He became a graduate student researcher. He started experimenting to prove his new theory. His theory would create new ways to prevent some types of cancer and other diseases. Now, here is another important revelation about Richard E. Bright. Alright, so Richard, an all-rounder. Richard E. Bright is not just a scientist. He is, in fact, an all-rounder. He is a good debater and a public speaker. He is also an expert photographer, a good canoeist, and an outdoors person. His social studies teacher praises him for his will to work hard, do his best, and win. So, Richard E. Bright happens to be not just a scientist, rather, he is a multi-talented personality. As we all can see, he is a good debater, a public speaker, an expert photographer, a canoeist, an outdoors person, and then we also have got to know about his social science teacher, praising him for his willingness, his determination to work hard, do his best, and win. So, eventually, Richard E. Bright turns out to be a multifaceted personality. Alright? Now, let us read about Richard E. Bright in the eyes of his social studies teacher. Alright? As we have seen and got to know from this text, Richard E. Bright had always been a straight A student. He was exceptionally well in his academics, a very bright student. Richard was also passionate about debating and Model United Nations clubs. Richard admired his social studies teacher, Mr. Whitehair, who opened his mind to new ideas. According to Mr. Whitehair, the social studies teacher of Richard E. Bright, Richard would always put in extra effort. He was competitive in spirit and he wanted to do the best job he could. So we can see Mr. Whitehill was in all praise for Richard E. Bright for all his good qualities. Alright, my dear students, the lesson, The Making of a Scientist, comes to a conclusion with this note. Richard, a true scientist. So, Richard has all those qualities that make one a true scientist. He has curiosity and a first-rate mind. He also has the will to win for the right reasons. All these are ingredients in the making of a scientist. So, dear students, we have got to understand what are the different qualities which were present in the personality of Richard E. Bright. So those very qualities of Richard helped him in the process of becoming a true scientist. So these qualities include, among others, number one, curiosity. So as we all have got to see from the text, Richard E. Bright had been a very curious and inquisitive child right from his school years, right? Then he had a very bright, sharp mind. He was observant. He had a first-rate mind. Thirdly, Richard also has the will to win for the right reasons. So all these are, in fact, ingredients. All these are qualities which are essential in the making of a scientist, as we have seen in the case of Richard E. Bright. So he was imbibed with all these very qualities that are required in the making of a scientist, and that is definitely the reason behind his repute, behind his worldwide recognition as a true scientist of this world. Alright, so with this I have come to the end of my presentation on the lesson, The Making of a Scientist. I urge each one of you to just read the chapter line by line. Alright, so in this presentation I have just given you an overview of the lesson, The Making of a Scientist, highlighting some of the key areas, or you can say some of the key points of the chapter. So at the same time, I request you people to please read the chapter thoroughly, because it's really interesting and it would definitely engross your mind to know about the scientist Richard E. Bright. Above all, you will feel thrilled and enlightened to know about what were the different qualities possessed by Richard E. Bright right from his childhood days, which eventually helped him to nurture his scientific bent of mind, or you can say to quench his thirst for learning and knowledge. Alright? We have also got to understand how, with the right amount of inspiration and encouragement at the home front, one can definitely rise and shine in one's life. So here I am talking about the significant, or you can say instrumental, role played by Richard's mother in the making of Richard as a scientist. Alright, so with this, I end my presentation here. Thank you.